All right, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Art. This is our live virtual studio. Today's guest is Sameena Sitabkhan. Uh, I guess I should let you guys know really quick before we get started that we're recording this. You guys can follow along, or you can watch the recording later and follow along at home, or you're at home right now, but you know what I mean. Um, and I will send that link out probably in like 2 or 3 days. Um, all right, Sameena is an artist that I'm personally a huge fan of. I've been following her on Instagram for I think probably the past 6 months, and I just love her work, and it's why I wanted to have her out here. I also love that her background is a little bit non-traditional in that she is an architect as well as an artist. And today she is going to talk a little bit about that, show us her work, and show us her process. And I think it's going to be really cool. So, Sameena, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and sorry, really quick before we begin, if you guys have any questions, there's a small group. You guys can feel free to just talk. If you, I think you might have to ask for permission since this is a webinar, or you can just put your questions in the chat and I'll ask on your behalf. All right. So sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and show you a little bit about my work and my process. It looks like a small group. And so if you guys want to unmute or talk, that's totally great. We can do this interactive, or you can also just watch. It's up to you. So anyway, so my name is Sameena Sitabkhan. I live in Oakland, California. I'm out in California on the West Coast, and I'm a practicing architect. So I'm not I guess a professional artist or a professional collage artist. I kind of came to this on my own in a self-taught way. My profession is very much pretty rigorous and by the rules, and a lot of work for clients and a lot of codes and a lot of parameters. And I find collage art to be very flexible and freeing, and kind of an antithesis to the work I do on a daily basis. It just, there's, in my mind, when I make collage, there's no rules and it's easy. And I use it to de-stress. And I always did collage, but very minimally, but I really got going during the pandemic when I was at home working with my son on distance learning and not knowing what to do, while I had to listen to him, listen to his class go on, which was kind of torture. But it was like, I just sat on the side and I started cutting out stuff from magazines. And I found that I could really just put stuff together while I was listening to him and helping him. So that's kind of where it kind of took off. And I've been sort of spending time in the basement since then. Whenever I can to do this work, it makes me happy. So I hope that gives you a good background to who I am. I'm married. I live with my husband and my son, who is now 11, and he's adopted from India. And I'm also Indian American. So, and we also have 2 cats. So I hope this is all making sense. I feel like I'm babbling into the space. So hopefully you're listening and this is making sense. So I just wanted to, just start a little bit by saying, and I don't know, some of you might already be collage artists here. So if any of this is repetitive, I apologize. I haven't done one of these workshops before, so hopefully it'll make sense. So I think collage is for anybody. And I think it can tell stories directly or indirectly, even if you gather a bunch of materials that you find on the floor of your house and cut them up and stick them into a collage. It's still telling a story of who you are. There might be receipts, or there might be images from magazines, and something about those pieces is telling a story or relating something about your identity and who you are. So I think it's a really powerful art, and it's a very personal art. And it's also, there's a million different mediums and techniques that you can use. And I'll be sharing some ideas and thoughts, I guess, today as we go through the workshop. It's also, to me, it's stress relieving because it is so organic and sort of rule-free, at least the way I practice it. And it's just something I can do when I need to calm myself down and sit down and focus. And somehow just the experience of cutting and scraps and paper and putting them down in some sort of a layout on a piece of cardboard or found object is just really very relaxing. And I also just want to note it because it is such an organic process. Everybody does collage differently. Everyone uses different glues and everyone uses a different order, and there's no right way to do it in my mind. And so the techniques I show you are just stuff I've learned. Like, you might see me doing something and be like, why is she doing that? There's like a better way to do it. But and it's just how I've come to it and how I've learned to do this. So just go for it. So I'm going to start by showing some of my work and sharing some of the methodologies, I guess, if that can be a word, just some of the bigger themes of the work I do. And then I'm just going to share some techniques and maybe make a few collages. And hopefully you can make them along with me. If you have a setup to do it, it just really requires a piece of paper and some glue and scissors and a magazine or some paper objects you found. So we can talk about that in a second. I'm going to share screen. I've just collected a few things here that are looking, hopefully you can see my screen, that are just a few different ways that I make collage, just to give you a kind of background. So I'm calling this one abstract. Sorry, this is after I said there's no rule, there's no formal art theory or anything behind it, but abstract's the best word. And the way I do these is just using scraps of paper that I find or tearing stuff up. And it's a very organic process. I just start by gluing a few things down and then keep adding to it and then scribble on it and add paint. And it's really just about constantly testing if the layout's working and taking the collage, putting it across the room and double checking if, it makes sense and if the layout's right and if my eye is going to the right place. The composition, the thickness, how it's layered, any hierarchy, even an abstract collage in my mind can have some hierarchy, meaning there's an object that's a little more important than the other objects and you have your eye go to it. So, I think in my mind, my eye kind of goes to this area, although this one doesn't have a hierarchy as much to me. So, and let me show you these categories and I'll show you the work in the studio. So that's the first category. I also like to use people and the figure. I'm Indian American, so my parents immigrated here from India in the 60s and 70s to Los Angeles, where I'm from and where I was born. And I like to really look at these vintage pictures of women in advertisements from India and a lot of Bollywood references. And so I have to, a lot of these images are not readily accessible, like in old books or magazines and stuff over here. So I generally go on the internet and find pictures and download them. And then I scan them or I cut them up or I print them. And I do different things with it. But I love using the figure of Bollywood stars to just, to explore femininity and different expressions of my own identity. So this is kind of a category where I generally, I find an image and then I will create a collage of scraps or other abstract materials, and then I will layer it in behind the faces or the bodies, or kind of chop and get in through some of them. So some of these are digital and some of these are analog collages, but many of these are digital because of the imagery. And I think, in general, it's harder to find printed vintage material of people of color or people from other cultures. I have collected some on my travels to India and stuff, but it's still hard to find. So the internet is an amazing place to find this stuff and find exactly what you want. And, some people are purists about collage and want to make everything by hand and do analog, but I use a hybrid method of analog and digital where, for instance, in this collage, in this collage right here, the background images are all analog stuff that I found around the house or I'd collected I cut them out, I scanned it, and then I digitally combined it with the image of the woman that I found online. So does anyone have any questions, chat, or anything like that? No? Okay, I'll keep going. Just feel free to cut in. You can just put something in the chat if you want. The next category of types of collages I made are kind of, I just call them storytelling, or like a progression of panels. So I use, in the top one, I used a lot of materials that I found at my parents' house. So like I found some old brochures. My dad saves everything. Like he had his original tickets for when he first came here in like 1958. So sometimes I scan them because I think some of them are actually valuable objects, and sometimes I cut them up and put them in collages. But this collage kind of, in my mind, tells a story of my parents' early journeys here, the car my dad had. I found some of my mom's old typing journals when she took typing classes. And so, I loosely sort of combined imagery that makes sense to me and sort of this like kind of long horizontal panel to get all the references and stories in. And I'll show you the actual piece in a second. I know this image is probably so small you can't see it. This is a similar thing. This is a little more abstract, but I used parts of an old comic book that I'd gotten in India that I really liked, along with other found materials, and just divided it into 3 pieces, but used a common palette for all 3 to kind of put together a story of some things that are personal and have some meaning to me about my early trips to India. Let's see. Okay, and then the last one that is like my favorite because it's so fun is just taking like scraps and pieces that are teeny and maybe just gluing them all together really fast onto a page and then cutting it up into postcards or playing cards or bookmarks or things like that. The postcards are here really fun to make. I sometimes send them out to people just for fun and then ask if they'll send me a postcard back. I don't know, you guys might be on Instagram or not. There's a really vibrant and amazing community on Instagram. I've only been on Instagram for like a year or 2, but there's such a vibrant collage community on there. And I've every opportunity I've had to show work or do a workshop like this or anything has come from Instagram. So, I use it only professionally. I try not to post too many selfies or anything like that, but it's just been such a great venue to get feedback from other artists. And I've learned so many techniques from talking to other people. I'll just share. Let's see if I can find my Instagram. Okay, so this is my Instagram account, and I just post, I post the work I make. You'll see some of them on here. And then, I share, and 90% of the people that I interact with on Instagram are other collage artists. And there's all kinds of like wonderful collectives and art competitions and open calls for art and all kinds of things happening that you can just, really be a part of. And it's, anyone can join. You don't have to be a practicing artist. You can just be learning collage. You can ask questions, but it's been such a great thing to get me through the pandemic. And it's also really, it motivates me to finish pieces and get them photographed and ready in a method or manner that I can post it without being embarrassed. So I have to like do a little bit of work and, put it together. I have to maybe explain the art. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but it's just been super amazing. So I highly recommend, if you are on Instagram, great. If you're not, to just make yourself an account, even if you just want to learn collage or just practice. It's just such a great way to be inspired by all these great artists that are out there. I don't know if my feed is, I have, Twin Cities Collage Collective. I have so many, I follow a lot of, well, now they're not showing up. maybe nobody's making collage today, but yeah, I follow so many great artists and I just get so inspired by this. And sometimes I try out a style that I see or something like that. So anyway, that is that. Everyone doing okay? We'll keep going. So those are kind of the main techniques I want to show. I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'll just show you some of the stuff I have sitting around here. I don't know if you can see. Let me take this out. So here's one of the sort of the storytelling pieces. So there we go. So this is the one that I was just telling you about that is like a big piece that has a sweep of stuff, and it's a fully analog collage, and it has like paint, cut out pieces, I printed pieces from stuff from the internet, and I scribbled all over it, I painted all over it, all kinds of stuff. So this is one of my favorites. It's a very personal piece to me. And then this is another on the theme of storytelling. I think just layout wise, I like to just go for this like a sweep. So kind of, there's always a figure or a character to me in these storytelling narrative collages. And there's kind of a sweep of a story going through it. And then I add text and different things. So that's another one. This is a smaller one. I have no idea what the story is here, but there's something in it. But this one is really cool because it was a different collage before. And I had it up on the wall and I stared at it and I loved it for like a week. And then I started hating it. And I was like, this is the worst thing. I can't stand to look at it. So I went and threw it in the trash can. and then I was like, oh, but that's actually a good piece of wood. So I went back out and got it and I sanded the whole thing and peeled everything off. And then I ended up with this really amazing, really amazing texture back here. So then I started adding new pieces on top of it. And then I got this, which is one of my favorite little tiny collages that I have. So, no rules. And then let me show you a few abstract. Okay, so these are some of the abstract pieces where I literally just start, I can't even remember which direction this one goes. I think it's this. I just start, pasting stuff on, especially when I'm really stressed or I've had a bad day or a bad week. I just come down here to my basement lair. It's really dark down here. The Zoom camera is on my computer is making up for that, and it looks bright, but it's dark. But I just come down here quietly and get away from everybody and just paste stuff to paper, and it makes me very happy. So that's one of the abstract ones. This is another abstract one. So most of these are smallish, right? I've been really struggling with making big art. I mean, in order to sell art and to get up on art on galleries, a lot of people like larger pieces. So one of my challenges that I'm trying to work through is how to make bigger pieces. But the fact that a lot of material you cut out comes from magazines that are about, 8.5 by 11, about this size, makes it so that the art ends up this size. So I'm still working through that. So if any of you guys have suggestions, I'd love to know. This is more of the storytelling one, but I like to use found objects. This is a box with a printer that I got a while ago. So I just, try not to throw anything away. I find scraps and just, put art on them. Sometimes when I'm done, like in this one I was showing you, I just glue it. I just went to the store and bought a sheet of plywood and cut it up. And then I just glue the cardboard to the plywood, and then I can put, hanging stuff on the back and it's done. I don't coat them either. It's something I experiment with that because it felt like so unfinished to just have it here. And I was like, oh my God, what if it's up in a gallery and like a piece of the paper just starts randomly peeling off, So I tested putting top coats on, but I found that top coats really destroyed the texture of a collage because, I don't know if you can see this, but in this collage, some of the pieces are glossy and some of them are matte. and some of them are like graphite or all kinds of things happening. And it really, I think that layering of all those different materials and textures is really important to a piece of collage art. And when you put a top coat on it, it kind of flattens and dulls that whole effect, even if you put a gloss on it. So anyway, that's that. What else do I want to show you? Oh, let me get a few here. So here's another one that's a very abstract one. This one is bigger, but I cheated. I I bolted, or I screwed two pieces together because I thought they went together, and I had an opportunity to show some art recently, and they thought that each of these pieces on their own was too small. So I'm like, okay, I'll just put them together. So that's what I did. And then one of the last things that I really like doing is making these little cards. So here's a whole bunch of, I'm gonna drop them all over the place. Here's a whole bunch of the little cards I've been making. And these are really fun. I just cut out a set of playing cards and then just found scraps and started gluing and cutting and putting things together. But then I was like, I wanted to display them somehow. And so then I started gluing everything together onto this big piece in an effort to make a large piece. So it's not done, but it's something I'm sort of thinking about, is like, is it going to work to show all these little pieces on one big board? And I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I've already started the process, so I'm going to glue it all down. And I'll show you one last piece, if you're not bored to death already. There's this is one of the newer ones that I was making. I don't think it's finished yet, but sometimes I just make it until I feel like I'm satisfied with it, and I finish it and I mount it, and then I might come back to it in a few months or throw it away or do something with it. Okay. So that's kind of the overview of who I am and what I'm doing. This is also that is my architecture desktop over there. So I work from home. So the collage stuff moves from side to side, and I have to clean a lot because I need to use it as an office as well, which is really a pain. I would love to have a real studio that I rent somewhere someday, but that's not happened yet. So anyway, oh, somebody has a hand up.
Hi, I was just wondering, I don't know if you already covered this, but what program you use for digital collage?
Yes, I use Photoshop a lot. So I can just here, I was gonna actually show something. So yes, I use Photoshop, and let me see if I can actually find, this might be, wait, let me stop screen sharing for a sec. Let me find would you like to see a digital collage on Photoshop?
Yes.
Okay. Give me like 2 seconds. Yeah, so this is a digital collage. So I use Photoshop, and I use a lot of layers. I'm not a pro Photoshop user, so there might be like something extremely stupid I'm doing here, but I try. So yeah, each thing is a layer. And if I turn off the image of the woman, you can see there's a whole bunch of different images here. Some of these are like, this is a scan of a piece of paper I scribbled on. This is a cutout of this is a piece of another collage that I scanned and then cut out. These are all separate images. These are all little pieces and parts. And I actually love doing the digital collages because it lets me reuse materials. And then it also lets me like archive and save materials that I don't want to destroy through a collage. So yeah, this is pretty much what I use. I also, I use a lot of, this is just an example, I use a lot of halftone. I've really been excited about using halftone lately. So, this is an image I pulled from online of a Bollywood actress named Rekha. And this is, I just made it into a halftone, and then I print it and I transfer it onto the collage. So those are some of the techniques I use. Sometimes I use Illustrator to do line work, and then I import it into Photoshop. But it's mostly Photoshop for the digital work. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for asking that. So I think what I was going to do next is just move to the desktop and just show you some of the tools I use, and then attempt to make a collage. It's kind of intimidating making one in front of all of you, but I will try to make something. So let me just give me a second. I'm going to stop my video and turn on my other camera. Okay, so I'm just going to move. This is just some stuff that I had here. These were the cards. I can show them to you better here. So these are all the little cards that I was making. These are super fun. Actually, sometimes I just use a big piece of paper, dump a bunch of materials on it, and then cut them up. But on these, I actually did little compositions on the card. So this is a really fun way to get started, or just stress relief and a good challenge. You're like, I need to make 52 cards, because that's how many cards are in a playing set, and it's just a really nice thing to do. And you also know that since you have 52, if you don't like anyone, like I don't like this one, but it's, you know, it's fine in the larger mix. And then there's a couple I really do like that just kind of happened organically, so super fun. I also like to use the sewing machine. So this is some maps that I printed out, and then I just I don't know if you can see, I just kind of sewed them together with the sewing machine. I'm not an expert sewer, so this is a bit of a mess, but I love the straight, you know, the thread and all the pieces hanging up. And then, you know, the next step would be, I would like glue this down on a piece of paper and collage or draw or paint all over it. So that's another fun thing. I'm going to show you here some tools. So these are the main things I use. Paste is a little better when you're using thinner paper because it doesn't warp the paper. But it's really sticky and it's really gross, and I usually make a mess of it, and everything around me gets also pasted down, which I hate. So that one I'm a little less excited about, but I do use it for a really thin piece of paper because it won't warp the paper as much. This is my favorite stuff. It's super cheap. It's super awesome. I use the matte finish because I don't like gloss at all. And, you know, this is a sealer. Sometimes I paint it over the top if something's not sticking down. And I just, you know, this is what I use for everything. I love this stuff. It's great. I even glue down the cardboard to the plywood with this, and it does a really great job. So, I mean, we'll see in like a year if it's still stuck on, but that's what I use for now. This is kind of the fancier version. So this stuff's also, this one's a, wait, is this the right? Yeah, I think this is the right one. This is also a glue, an acrylic medium. This one's gloss. I was testing it out and I didn't like it, but it's kind of a higher quality, more expensive product than Mod Podge, but Mod Podge works great. So I just bought this and I haven't used it again. The basics, you know, you need a couple of blades and a scissors. I don't like X-Acto blades. I love these Olfa blades in different sizes. These are super great. And this is just my favorite scissors. Everyone has a favorite scissor, but you know, if scissors aren't sharp, it's really hard to cut out from magazines sometimes. So something to think about. I have a bunch of brushes that I abuse a lot and probably don't use for the right thing, but I just bought a bunch at like the art store, and I use them to apply glue and to apply paint for the most part. What else? I like to use paints. So, you know, sometimes when I go to the art store, I just pick up a couple of paints when they're on sale. Sometimes I usually use them to add pops of color and to kind of add to the art. I don't paint the back of the piece as much. On some of my art, I've painted the back white, but I just use primer. We have like a bucket of primer laying around in the other room. So I just put primer on a piece of wood or on cardboard and use that. This roly thing is super great for gluing down pieces that are stubborn. So this is really neat. You can find this in an art store. It's supposed to be really clean, but and not have glue all over it. So that definitely compromises it. So probably buying a new one soon. And then I just have, like, I don't know, I just collected some other stuff I use. These are stencils I used to have when I had to learn hand drafting and architecture. They're still knocking around at like art stores and you can buy them, but they're really fun. These are lettering guides that, when they used to hand draft, they use these to hand letter architectural drawings. But now I just put paint on them. Sometimes I just lay it over a collage and smear a bunch of paint on it and just get the, a little sort of a stamp of some of the letters. I like to use thread. I like to use colored pencils. I like to use hole punches. And there's probably a whole bunch of other stuff I use and that you can think of using, but basically anything is fair game in collage. So those are just some of the tools. And then I think I'm gonna get some, I think I'm gonna just start making a couple collages, if that's okay with everybody. If you have materials or things available or you want to work in Photoshop, that would be great if you work along with me. And I'll just talk a little bit about how I put together the collages as I work. I was gonna start. So I think a good way to start a collage session, before you sit down to collage, if you have time, is to spend some time collecting materials. So, I sometimes in the evening, if I'm tired or I'm watching TV or I'm doing something, I just grab a magazine. For some reason, my husband still gets all these catalogs in the mail. I know that's not very PC and we should stop wasting paper, but we still get a fair amount of catalogs. So sometimes I just grab them and I just sit there kind of absentmindedly cutting out anything I feel is interesting. So I cut out a lot of, you can't even see this, but it's a person. I cut out a lot of figures, but I usually cut their heads off because I like to collage in other things in parts of their heads. So I just, I collage I take the bodies. I have a lot of like boring, nerdy architecture magazines around. And once they stop feeling precious to me, I start cutting stuff out of them, or sometimes I scan stuff. I love cutting out text, but I never cut out an actual word because I love when it's a little abstracted. So like I'll take, this is outrage. I'll take a word, but then I'll cut it in half. So then when I collage it, I can kind of, put it together like that and it turns into an abstract form. Or if I put it a little closer, you can kind of still get a sense of what that word is, but it's still abstracted. Sometimes I just rip stuff off because I'm really lazy, and also like ripped stuff instead of actual, cutting everything out exactly by the line. Some people are amazing at cutting stuff out, especially with the knives, and can cut out all kinds of detailed pieces. And those always look really good on collage if you have the bandwidth. But then you have to be sitting, with a cutting board and with your knife and be a little more diligent about it. I also, so this, you can't really see this. I don't know why the neon's not showing up. Oh, sort of. But, I love neon colors. So sometimes I just find a passage of some work I like or a quote I like, and I write it down in Word or Illustrator, and I print it out, and then I paint it, and then I rip it up into pieces. And I use a lot of that in the collage art. So I keep these kind of pieces around. Yeah, and there's just, like get a lot of furniture catalogs. You probably do too. And cut those out, little things that I have laying around that are just junk. I kind of keep, I'll show you. I buy these big plastic boxes from the art store, and then I just throw all kinds of paper and things in there. So it's not very organized, but at the bottom of each one, all kinds of little scraps and things keep landing. So I use a lot of that in my art, and I always grab a bunch of those before I start. If you're on Instagram, again, a lot of these collage collectives, you can sign up and they'll send you an amazing packet of stuff in the mail, like little collage packs, which will basically be an envelope full of all kinds of stuff that's cut out and looks really great. And it's kind of fun to work with because it's very different from the stuff you have. So yeah, so all kinds of different things. Some of them are cut out correctly, some aren't. You know, there's just a lot of things. This is like, you know, then I have some personal stuff, like this is a tourist brochure from India that I've obviously been using and cut up, but I love having little bits of the Hindi in there to just kind of, you know, because it's me and who I am, and it's vintage materials that I've collected on trips. So I also use that. I pay a lot of attention to color. So, you know, once you start collecting stuff from magazines, you'll start to see your own patterns. You'll start to see, like, obviously I really like oranges and pinks and like some of these greens. And then I like a lot of black and white stuff. I'm not really sure. There might be other stuff I like, but definitely you know, you'll start to see that there's things that you like and there's things that you don't like. And then once you start working in the collage, you'll kind of find out what those are. So, okay, so I'm gonna put these over here. So I thought for the first collage we make together, hopefully, we could just not think, and we could just make anything, if that makes sense. Oh, I had some nice pieces over here too. Collected. Okay, I'm gonna put a bunch of pieces here. I usually, where's that? I usually just get a piece of, I get a little plate. These are IKEA plates. I pour a bunch of glue in, and then I get a brush, and I'm very sloppy. So I usually, you know, I cut out a little better. This took a while, but I usually just, since the Mod Podge also acts like a sealer and it's matte and also glue, I don't get too picky about it. And I just kind of, you know, paint it on the page upside down. And then I just, you know, I kind of just glue it down, and I start that way. I get tons of glue on my hands, which makes me really happy because I get to peel off the glue later. So that's maybe some weird OCD thing, but I really like it. And then, yeah, I just start making a composition, you know, and this is just working blindly. I mean, I've been making these, I've made these enough that like, I kind of start in this bottom quadrant of the page and just kind of build up. But another way to do it, if it works, you know, another way a lot of people do it is they just kind of like lay stuff out first. So they kind of put stuff together and say, oh, I like that. And then, you know, this one's, and that doesn't work. This wants to go here. And then start, you know, putting stuff in, and then get the basic idea and then kind of remove it and put it back on. I don't use that method as much because I never get the right spot back when I put it in. So sometimes I have to like mark lines so I put it back in the right place, but I try it. This is interesting too. I went to like a garage sale and someone was giving this whole pack away of these gels, I think they are, for camera use. I think, I'm not exactly sure what they do, but I have like about 500 of these, and they're just transparent acrylic pieces with different colors. They don't glue that well, but they are so fun to just add to a collage for like transparency and a little pop of color. One of the advantages to planning your collage first is that I should have done is that this piece now I'm thinking should really have been on top, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I hope you can see how experimental and just, relaxing and just, chance taking this is. It's really about the materials that you start with. And it's really about, having some colors that you like and that go together before you start, but not thinking too hard on it. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, I'll keep going. So now I'm like really going hard on this blue and and this neon orange, I guess, but I like it. Sometimes I'll take some of these palettes I have and just start like drawing over the collage just to add layering to it. I'm kind of just ad-libbing here, so this one doesn't have a ton going on in terms of like planning and storytelling, but what I'm looking at a lot is the layout. So sometimes I'll take these collages like at this stage and I'll just go stick them on the wall or stick them somewhere and stare at them, and then I'll turn them. And sometimes it happens that it just works really well at a different orientation. Sometimes I'll go hold this up in a mirror and stand back so I can really study the layout. I tend to find that, I look a lot for where my eye goes first. And right now in this one, my eye's kind of pulling right in here, which is kind of what I want. But there's also, it feels like there's too much going on here, detracting from the middle. So, then I'll come back in and like, I don't know, rip a little piece off or put something more neutral in the space over here to draw attention back from that area. It's really just about having fun and making yourself happy. I hope that's making sense to everyone. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Even if you're not able to make a collage right now, if you can like grab a magazine and just start cutting out stuff while we're talking. If that's something you want to do, that would be really cool. Okay, now I put this other color in here. I'm not exactly thrilled with it, but I'm just going to keep going. And I'm just going to start going in and just filling up the whole page with color and texture. I'm so embarrassed to show my sloppy technique. Sorry. So also things that you think are not good for collage are sometimes really great for them. Just this is something that's already cut out, but it's just a fun little reminder, and it just kind of fills out the top of this collage. By the way, this is just a piece of chipboard. I usually use cardboard, but I couldn't actually find any last night. So I just, I had some chipboard lying around. You can buy a big sheet of this at any art store for like, I don't know, like $2.99 or $3, and just cut it up into smaller pieces. So I got a whole bunch of extra pieces that I cut out, but it's a really great medium to work on because the Mod Podge, is pretty good. You can start to see that. I don't know if you can see this, but the paper is starting to bow a little bit from the glue. So sometimes what I do is when the collage is, mostly dry, I just stack a bunch of books on it overnight, and it usually flattens into space. Eventually, this is why I like to mount these collages on plywood, because it really gives a rigid backing and a mountable surface. The other thing, maybe you guys know this, but I have a friend who's an artist, and she makes all these beautiful drawings and watercolor paintings. And I went to her studio, and like everything was framed and beautiful. And I was like, how do you afford framing all of this? Because framing is so expensive. And she's like, these are all IKEA frames. So I just been buying IKEA frames, and you know what? It's about the art, not the frame. And the IKEA frame is pretty decent. So that's another thing, you know, this can be framed. The IKEA frames come with a mat. If the mat doesn't fit, there's a lot of online places that I've seen that will cut custom mats for you, and they're pretty affordable. So, you know, you can become your, you know, one person framing company if you want. So, okay, so I'm going to leave this for now. But I hope that gives you an idea of how you can just start and just put stuff on. You know, you can keep going, you can get crazy, you can rip stuff off, you can, you know, you can scribble on it, you can, you know, you can come in and, I don't know, you can come in and like add, you know, dollops of paint in certain areas and sort of give it more texture and more depth and more layering and different things like that. So I don't know, I hope this helps you. Or I hope this gives you some inspiration for your own process. You can see how sort of random it is and fun. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. And what another thing I wanted to make that's really fun are postcards. Where did I put? Okay, so using the same chipboard, I've just cut out a couple of 4x6 postcards that are really, really fun. You know, you can use one side to put your stamp and do your mailing, and you can use the other side to, you know, to do your art on it. Sometimes I like to do them at the same time. So, you know, it's really great. And these are really great to just send to people to say hello and, you know, maybe prompt them or ask them to send you some art back, which is really fun. You know, so sometimes I just like, I literally just start with a ripped out piece and I put it on. One thing, I like to pay attention a lot to the edges of the paper. So sometimes, you know, I'll just, let's see, I'll put this kind of here and glue it to, oops, well, that just happened. So that's fine. And then I'll take my trusty blade and just, you know, just trim it off. So, you know, I get this kind of cropped looking image, and that's really fun. And then I'll just start putting, you know, like colored pieces together on this. And I know I mentioned in the prompt for the workshop that this workshop was about storytelling, and, you know, and I'm showing a lot of just kind of random stuff, but it is, I mean, I think all collage art is telling a story or giving narrative elements of yourself just in the things that you've chosen and the way that you're putting it together. You know, for instance, this is a place in India that I've been to that I really enjoy. And then this is like a piece of architecture coming into the space. So altogether, these really start to, you know, these tell a story of who I am. They're not a really direct story, but that is something I really enjoy in collage. I was talking earlier about, I got commissioned recently to do a collage for a newspaper, you know, a magazine article. And I found it really difficult because the collage had to be really pointed and really editorial, and it had to tell a very, very strong story. And I almost, since I like to do stuff that's a little more abstract, I got a little lost in the process because I couldn't quite nail down the story the way I wanted to. And eventually I did, and we worked through it, and I'm happy with the product and all of that. But it was a very difficult process, and it kind of took me away from the thing that I really like, which is just being totally organic and free with the art and letting, you know, my brain kind of decide how things go together and what colors get pulled in. Does that make sense? Okay. So there you go. There's a postcard. So I'm probably gonna send that one out. That one's good. And then I'm gonna start another one here. Don't throw anything away, not even the leftovers of the things you cut out. If you can manage, if you have the space and time to store it somewhere, it's just it's so fun to just pull out. I'll show you. I have these big orange boxes as well here. These are like some IKEA boxes, and I just have all kinds of things in here. I've seen some very amazing collage artists actually organize and have drawers with different materials, and maybe it's organized by color or it's organized by theme. And if you're that type of person and can do that, that is amazing, and you should definitely do that. But I have fun just kind of finding objects and random pieces in and searching through these boxes. Although sometimes I guess I do wish that it was slightly more organized, so when I do have an idea of something I want to do, I can just put it down. Sometimes I keep a sketchbook of ideas that I write down. Sometimes I want to do something very, very I guess very editorial or very pointed about a certain topic or something. And once I write it down and try and sketch out how I might do it, and then I start on it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It always changes, but having those prompts and those ideas around is pretty fun, and kind of can give you, sometimes it's fun to start a whole series that you've invented. Like maybe you want to do a series on things that used to be in your childhood home, and you go online or you have them and you print out a bunch of stuff of things that you would have found in your childhood home. And you start kind of just collaging them together into a series of like 5 collages, and they might be all abstract, they might all be like just dumped together, but it's very meaningful because all of those items meant something to you and tell the story of what your physical environment might have been growing up. This one is totally gotten crazy and out of control, because I'm talking and not really paying attention, but that is the fun of it. Just gonna go crazy here. Okay, and I'm just gonna turn this over and just lightly trim all the edges. And if you guys are interested, or if these don't look completely awful to you, I can mail these to you if you like. And maybe then you can mail me one back. If anyone would like to do that and just put their address into the chat, that would be really great. I'm totally happy to send these over to you if you send me one back. Or you don't have to. Okay, so then I've got 2 postcards there. And I'm gonna start with a third one. Hi.
Hi. The chat is disabled on my end.
Oh, the chat's disabled?
Yes,
Can
ma'am, on
we-
mine.
Let's see here. Chat. No? Ollie, can we get the chat abled for
Sorry,
Becca?
I'm working
Oh,
on it
okay.
right now.
Okay, cool. Great. And then I think Catherine had a question. Hi. Oh, I think you're muted. Oh, Catherine, okay. I think you took off the hand raise,
Yeah.
but if you have a question, Catherine, if you want to put it in the chat too, that is totally cool.
Yeah, everyone should have permission to use the chat.
Okay, sorry about that. It's Saturday morning over here, like it is for you too, but my hopefully.
I have all the supplies. I'm just cutting stuff out now.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Have you ever heard of artist trading cards? They do them about the size of a baseball card.
Yes.
So it's smaller than the 4x6. I've done those before. That's why I was wondering if you have done those.
Yeah. What are the artist trading card sizes that you did?
They did them about the size of a baseball trading card, so they fit in the sleeves, those plastic sleeves.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I've done, these are just regular playing cards. So they're a little smaller, but they're kind of similar size. But yeah, I love all those prompts that people do, artist trading cards and postcards, and some people trade art. One thing that's really fun that I've done is that you start a collage, like a starter collage, either digital or physical, and then you mail it to someone. So like I could take this maybe with a little less stuff on it and mail it to a collage artist or friend I really like and say, hey, finish this up. And then they'll do something to it that's amazing and will make it look a lot better and a lot cooler. And that's also really fun to do. I think that's part of the sort of the brilliance of the collage community, is kind of like the vibrancy and the willingness of everybody to just share. Like I met a local artist on Instagram. His name was Anthony Grant, who lives in the Bay Area, and we just chatted, and I eventually went to visit him at his studio, and he gave me all these great techniques and ideas. And like when I came back from visiting him, I was like really inspired for like a week, and I made all these new artworks that were kind of based on what I saw. So one of the big things that I always wonder about with collage is just the like plagiarism, right? Because you're taking images from magazines or online, and there's always like issues of crediting the artist or the photographer and all that stuff. And so I'm never sure, when I meet another artist and they show me their work, I always like ask them, hey, is it okay if I test out a similar technique? And like no one's ever said no. No one's ever been like, no, that's my own art, you can't copy it. Like everyone has been so willing to share. And I know even on Instagram and online, like a lot of artists copy each other's work, like as a practice or like a inspirational session, not copy, but try the same techniques. And everyone's been really open about that. So, as a rule, when I grab images from magazines and online, I try not to ever grab other people's art to use in collages. So that's just my own, everyone can have their own rules, but my own personal rule is just to, not use someone else's art, like not cut up someone else's collage. But I say that, and then I can tell you that there is a magazine called Cut Me Up that a couple of collage artists produce. And every few months they put together a magazine of they ask for a prompt, they put out a prompt, people mail in their collages, and then they publish them in a magazine. And what you have to do is you take the art in the magazine with a new prompt, and you have to cut that up, and you can add your own material to make new art. So you have to use the other artists' collages to make new art. So every magazine edition that gets put out just builds and builds and builds on this idea. So it's very, very cool. So I think, it's one of the few art forms where, you can learn from others and you can try different techniques and you can sort of be very, flexible. I just try not to use other people's art unless it's something like that Cut Me Up magazine where it's like sanctioned, if that makes sense. So, you can sort of form your own, you make your own opinions and your own judgments about the ethics and stuff around the art you're making. So, okay, I got 3 postcards and I got 1 address. So if 2 other people want to put stuff in, that would be cool, but you don't have to. I guess as a last one, I'll just make, where did I put that? I was gonna make some bookmarks, which I also find really fun to make. And on these, I just do it a different way, just glue down a bunch of stuff on the paper and then I will just cut out the bookmarks. So I'm just gonna spend the rest of the time having fun and putting this together, and hopefully you're also working and can make stuff like this.
Just so you guys know, the chat should work and everyone should already have permission to talk, so you don't even have to raise your hand. You should be able to just chime in whenever you feel like it.
Just wanted to check on like if you were going to take it out of the recording when you posted it for addresses.
The addresses in the chat will not be part of the recording, but if you say it in the recording, it will be.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh yeah, thanks for asking that question. I know there's always privacy
So yeah, I should say that.
concerns. Yeah, and I will literally use your address to send you a postcard, and I will throw it away and burn it and put it away somewhere. So where are you located, Becca? I'm like, what state are you in? Are you local?
We're in North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I found the seminar.
Nice. Is there Collage Collective or anything happening in North Carolina?
I'm not really sure. Not that I don't live in a bigger city. I live in a smaller town, but
Okay.
and we actually own a tattoo studio in Fayetteville, which is near Fort Bragg. So there's artist stuff going down all the time, but I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you do tattoos?
I don't. My husband does. He was in the military, but when he got out, he started tattooing. He's very good with like portraits and black and gray. He does color too, but
That's awesome.
very talented.
Yeah. That's cool. I sadly have not been to North Carolina, which I guess I should remedy that, because it sounds like a cool place to come visit.
Maybe you can convince somebody to do a show at Raleigh.
Yeah.
Hint, hint.
Right? I should get on that. It'll take like about 5 years, but I'll start now. Can I come over? And I know doing shows and stuff is still such a baffling thing to me. As you know, someone like, I'm kind of self-taught and I'm just kind of hanging out on Instagram, making stuff. But you know, I've been finding it harder to connect locally, although now it's finally happening, but that was a little harder for me to do. Like, I feel like I connected faster with someone in, I don't know, Minneapolis to ask questions than I did with someone who's like local here in the Bay Area. So that's always been, that's kind of interesting. And then I did a show of just my art at a wine bar locally, which I loved. Like, I don't have to be in a gallery, I'll put my art anywhere. And the wine bar was really cool, and I got to put up a lot of pieces. But it was an interesting process because my pieces were very small, and the wine bar had like really tall ceilings and really high walls, like 23-foot high walls, and my pieces kind of disappeared on the wall. So like I had to go back about like 4 times and keep adding. I was like making art, like just, frenetically and just frantically making art. I like to go take over there and keep hanging on the walls. So that was kind of a really fun, interesting, slightly stressful process, but I learned a lot. And I thought when I started, I was like, I don't really know how to hang art. I don't really know what the parameters are and what the rules are. But once I finished, like, I felt pretty confident that I could hang art in a lot of different places. So it was a good process. It's very stressful, but fun. And then, also just, talking to the owners of the place and understanding what they were looking for in the art. And it wasn't, they were looking for something very specific. Like they wanted to make the space, make some interesting art on the space that would draw people in to come and drink and hang out and eat and all that stuff. And so then, I was like, well, I have what I have, and hopefully it will help in this process. So I'm just making this big, giant abstract mess over here. And I'm going to start chopping it up into smaller bookmarks. And I use that a lot to give to people as gifts or just to have. I think I just kind of enjoy the process of cutting stuff out of a magazine, tearing it up, recombining it, and then cutting it up again. And somehow that is just a really very fun process for me.
Hey, Sameena, a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So can you just talk really quickly on how you think your collage practices impacted your architectural practice?
Yeah. So far, they're still a little bit different. But, one thing that as an architect, and sometimes I work on public spaces, the thing I always love is putting art in the space, but big art like posters or murals or, really large pieces. So I've been more and more interested in thinking about how I can put those two together, like how I can make my art big enough to like cover a whole wall, and then starting to think about what that art does to the space. I think that whole process I just told you about of exhibiting at District at the wine bar kind of brought that process to the front for me, because I was like, okay, so I design spaces and I understand spaces, but now I'm putting my art in the spaces and it's not all quite jiving together. So, but in other terms, in other ways, like I think a little bit, just the looseness and experimentation of doing collages has helped me sort of loosen up my architectural process a little bit. I think sometimes I've been using collage, especially digital, in the architectural process, which is what I originally did, but then I stopped because I didn't want to merge the two. But I have been using collage a lot in like early proposals for clients. There's a couple of architects who I love. One of them, her name is Tatiana Bilbao, and she practices in Mexico City. And when she envisions a conceptual design for a client and provides a rendering, which is like a view of what they're going to get, she uses collage. So a lot of architects will show kind of hyper real renderings. Like if you hired me to design an addition to your house and you wanted to see what it looked like, I might show you a 3D rendering that has, the right paint color, the right flooring, the right materials, the right windows. So it looks very realistic, so you can imagine what it is. But this architect uses collage and kind of abstract collage to convey her ideas, because it leaves a little bit to the imagination and it lets her develop the design together with the client in a more organic way, instead of just saying like, no, this is it, this is what it's going to look like. But no, like this is kind of a feel of what it's going to be. This is kind of a sense of what it looks like. So I've been trying personally in my own practice to kind of move that direction and use collages in the early design stages. So I've done that for like a couple of proposals we've done. One of them worked really well and the client appreciated it, and one of them totally did not. The client was like, what? Like, what are you trying to tell me? I just asked you to design this. So yeah, so, but on a broader scale, thank you, Sherry. On a broader scale, I think it sort of impacted, it's loosened me up a little bit, and I haven't been quite so rigid, and I'm trying to be less rigid, because once I got comfortable with collage and I feel comfortable enough to just throw a bunch of materials onto a piece of paper and glue them together and be like, I like this, which didn't happen in the beginning. It took me a while. I used to spend a lot of time moving materials and laying them out before I glued them down. And then I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. So if I could bring that same process into my work, into my architecture, I would really, that's my goal. Does that kind of answer the question? Ollie.
I believe so.
Okay. All right, so I think the last thing I'm going to do, unless anyone else has questions, is to just cut these bookmarks up and then probably you know what? I'm going to add a few more things to it while I'm here.
I noticed when you do your collages, you leave a lot of negative space. Is that,
Yeah,
what
I
is
love
your
white
reasoning
space.
behind that?
I think the negative space lets the collage live. Some of my collages don't have a lot of negative space, and I think they are just too overwhelming. And so I like, I also in the past have done some graphic design, and I always used white space in a very strong way, but I think it just offsets and lets the elements shine if you give a little bit of breathing room between them. It's very hard to talk and make at the same time. I keep getting distracted. But I like talking. That's what I want to learn how to do better, is to do both. There is a ton of collage artists on Instagram who just constantly post live videos of themselves making work, which are so fun to watch too. There's also there's collage artists who work on a really big scale, who work in teams and have, you know, other people work together to form the art. So it's collaborative. I think that's pretty interesting too. I don't know exactly how that works, but I find that pretty interesting. Okay, now I'm getting closer. Put a few more pieces on. Right after you asked that question, I started annihilating all the white space. Don't know why. That's funny. I want to leave a little. Okay. So you can see what the Mod Podge is doing to this piece of paper. So if this were just going to be a single collage, I would probably in a few minutes after the paint is not tacky, I mean the glue is not tacky anymore, I just put a bunch of books on top of it and let it dry overnight, and it'll come out very nice and flat. Yeah, so you know, I just start. I've also experimented with making pillows out of collages. So taking the scans and going onto websites like Society 6, or there was a great website in Canada called The Art of Wear that made these really beautiful high quality really high quality pillows from scans of art. So, you know, I think art should be everywhere, not just on the walls. So I love, you know, I'd be like totally down for making a bedspread out of a piece of collage art, although that's challenging because it has to work. And like, who wants this crazy chaotic piece of artwork on their bed? I don't know, maybe somebody, but it's I think there's a lot of different ways you can take your art out into the world, and a lot of you can integrate your art into useful objects like bookmarks or postcards, and also get it out to get it around and out to people that you like. Okay, so those are my bookmarks right here. So I would just I couldn't find the string this morning, but I just I punch a hole in it, and then I'll put a little piece of string. So if anyone still reads real books, sometimes I do. Not as often as I want. So I think that's it. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I'm gonna just get your addresses here. I'm gonna copy this.
I can also send them to you after this.
Oh, that would be great. That would be helpful, because now I have glue all over my hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hope that was enjoyable, and thank you for spending part of your Saturday with me. That was really fun. Take care.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I guess that concludes today's program. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.